All right, we're live. I think I'm just going to assume that we're live and it's working. And we see, like, I see that there are 81 people watching right now. Uh, Assuming y'all can hear us. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being here, Priyansh.
Thank you so much, YK, for inviting. Looking forward to this live stream.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. First of all, did you want to introduce yourself and your background on competitive programming?
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, my name is Priyansh Agarwal. I'm pursuing an undergraduate degree in computer science. Right now, I'm in third year, so just one more year to go for until college ends. Apart from that, I've been doing competitive programming for like the past 2.5 years. I do have some remarkable achievements in that as well. For example, I have Google Kickstart, global rank 6 and India rank 1 in the recent Google Kickstart rounds. And yeah, apart from that, I've been creating a lot of content as well around competitive programming on my YouTube channel. Uh, and yeah, I love teaching competitive programming as well.
Cool. Yeah, I was kind of curious. Where do you think that passion for teaching comes from for you?
Okay, so it's not like I had this passion for teaching from a very long time. Since I started content creation, I guess I started enjoying it a lot, and I realized that if I can explain some concept that I have in my mind to somebody else in a beautiful way, in a way that they can understand it, that gives me a lot of dopamine. So that's one thing.
Hmm. Uh, do you feel like is it something that runs in your family? I mean, don't worry, like if this is a personal question, but yeah, just curious.
Yeah, not exactly like I don't have anybody in my family as such teaching. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I would be the first person who has even started content creation.
Cool. Yeah, I'm actually the same way. But Parse says this man needs no introduction, and yeah, I guess you need no introduction. You're already known on this like YouTube world.
Yeah, that feels great to hear.
Yeah. And someone's asking like, please share his channel link as well. I already put it in the description, so you should be able to
Yeah, and
find
it's
it
also there in
there.
the title as well. So YK has tagged me as Priyansh Agarwal. So probably you can click on that and you'll be directed to my channel as well.
Yep. Okay. That's probably enough for the introduction. So let's just get started. So I'm just gonna ask you kind of
Yeah.
simply, how should people get started with competitive programming?
Okay, so first of all, in order to be able to start competitive programming, you need to first of all start programming. Like you have competitive programming. So obviously it requires programming, right? So I would suggest learning any programming language. One of my favorite languages, C++. Some people in competitive programming also code in Java and as well. I mean, also in Python. So I would suggest starting your CP journey by learning some programming language. Apart from that, you'll realize with time is one thing that you'll realize with time is that competitive programming requires a lot of math stuff. So if you're good with mathematics, you should be good to go. But if you're someone who's who doesn't have a lot of experience with mathematics, I would suggest spending some time learning basics of number theory, permutations, combinations, and basic linear algebra. Right. Once you're done with this, when you're attempting a competitive programming problem, you'll be in a very good position to jot down your observations in a mathematical form, right? And apart from that, you should be like having a good typing speed, I would say. It's not something that is required initially when you're starting competitive programming, but at one stage you realize that having a good typing speed also enables you to code very fast and also enables you to solve problems quickly, because essentially when you're doing competitive programming, you're given a bunch of problems that you need to write a code for, and this code should run fast enough. I mean, it should run in a given amount of time, and also you should be able to come up with a solution in a given amount of time, right? So essentially, if you're coming up with a solution and are able to code it up really very quickly, and you're able to submit it before somebody else, you're considered better than them in terms of competitive programming level. So yeah, I guess these are the three things that you should look for. Learn a programming language, have some experience with mathematics, not a lot, and again, like, if you have a good typing speed, I would say 30 wpm, 30 words per minute, or something like 40 words per minute, you should be in a good position. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, YK.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you mentioned math because I was kind of saying the same thing about coding interviews. Like math is like really helpful.
And yeah, I mean, if I were to put it this way, maths is even more important for competitive programming than it is for interviews and data structures algorithms. Because if you look at data structures and algorithms, you have a certain type of techniques that you can employ to solve a problem, right? So it gets kind of it is not very mathematics heavy. But when you look at competitive programming problems, they're essentially something like puzzles, right? So if you want to solve puzzles, you cannot be just thinking on an algorithmic level, right? You need to be able to jot down your observations on a pen and paper, and that's more like jotting down some mathematical expressions. So it becomes even more important in competitive programming.
Yeah, thank you for that. And before we started going live, you were mentioning how coding interviews and competitive programming are sort of related, right?
Yeah, they are related. So essentially, if I were to put it this way, if you're very good with competitive programming, you have a very good chance of nailing all of these coding interviews. This is primarily because when you look at competitive programming, you're not just solving puzzle type of problems. You're also solving algorithmic problems, right? And that is what is expected in most coding interviews. They expect you to be able to solve algorithmic problems that might be requiring some data structures as well. So if you look at competitive programming, people are essentially solving very hard data structures algorithms problems in competitive programming. Right. So I mean they are somewhat related. If you're good with CP, you will be very good with DSA and interviews as
well. Nice. Okay, so I wanna keep our focus on like competitive programming in this one, and there's a question that might be a good place to start. How to get to expert from specialist in 2 months on Codeforces. So I think like the question before this one is like, is Codeforces even the right platform? Like, what platforms do you recommend to get started?
Okay, so Codeforces is definitely not the first platform that you should be starting your competitive programming journey on. I feel that if you have to start CP, you can start on a platform like HackerRank or maybe HackerEarth or maybe even Geeks for Geeks and LeetCode. Right. So you should start with a platform that is more rewarding. For example, if you look at LeetCode, people mostly boast about the number of problems they've solved on LeetCode. People don't boast about the rating, right? And this is very different when you compare it to Codeforces. Codeforces is like a competitive programming website wherein everybody is competing to gain their rating. To increase their rating. So what happens on Codeforces is that you have a rating system. The person having the higher rating is considered to be at a higher level, right? So if you just start your competitive programming journey right from Codeforces, what will happen is that you'll get really demotivated. People who have experience of about 2 or 3 years in competitive programming would be very likely performing would be performing much better than you, right? So essentially when you're just starting out and if you see everyone performing much better than you, you might get demotivated. So yeah, Codeforces is not the right platform to start. I would suggest HackerRank, HackerEarth, Geeks for Geeks, or even LeetCode if you just have to start right now.
Right. Okay, and I thought you might be able to like, it might be helpful for you to share your screen and maybe like kind of walk through the whole process of maybe like getting started for the beginners, and then like for you to like prepare for like particular competitions, how to get better, and all of that might be helpful.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about some websites that are there on that are there for competitive programming. Let me share my screen here. Give me a minute. So I hope my screen is visible. If you can confirm that.
Yep, I can see it. Hopefully the viewers should be able to see it too.
Cool. Can we have like a +1 in the chat or maybe a yes or a no in the chat that can confirm if my screen is visible?
Yeah.
And then we can get started.
Yeah, I think we can just assume that it's visible and we can continue.
Okay, sure. So I'll just show you some websites that are there for getting started. First of all is HackerRank, right? So this is one website, and I'll just keep opening some websites here so that you have an idea. Just a minute. Yeah, I think this one it is. Cool. So this is one website that you can get started at for competitive programming. Other one is HackerEarth, right? And like I suggested, Geeks for Geeks. Geeks for Geeks doesn't have a lot of competitions as such. Like it doesn't have a lot of competitive programming contests. But if you open this website, you'll find a lot of implementations of data structures and algorithms. So whenever you feel that you want to implement something, you can refer to Geeks for Geeks and you'll have an implementation for that. Other is LeetCode. I mean, LeetCode is not like a competitive programming website, but this is something that you can refer to if you're preparing for coding interviews as well. But this can be considered like a good website to just start your problem solving journey. Right. These are the four websites which are I would say more rewarding for beginners. Right. They don't focus a lot on competitions, but they focus more on getting you started. So these are the four websites: Hacker Rank, Hacker Earth, Geeks for Geeks, and LeetCode. Now let's talk about websites that you should be referring to when you're already like at some level in competitive programming, or you've solved some problems that are like around competitive programming. So the first website that you can refer to is like CodeChef, then there is Code Forces, and the last one is AdCoder. Right. And what you'll notice is that all of these websites, they have a certain, rating system. For example, if you look at this website called CodeChef, this is my profile on CodeChef, and this is like my rating on CodeChef. Right. The higher this number, the more level. I mean, the better I'm concerned. I'm considered. When like my profile is shown. Right. So this does provide you with some metrics. For example, at this rating, which is 2201, my global rank is 603 on this platform, and my country rank is 286. Right. So you might be having two types of ratings. One of them is your current rating, and the other is your highest rating. For example, it might be visible here. The highest rating is 2225. Right. And mostly when you're telling your rating to somebody, you essentially want to tell them your highest rating. Right. So this is one platform you can start attempting problems on once you have some hang of problem solving. The next is Code Forces. Right. This is my profile on Code Forces. And again, this has a rating system. Like my current rating is 1912 and my maximum rating is 2089. Right. And this just shows my like rating graph. Like, for example, if I attempt a competitive programming contest, if I perform well, my rating would go up. If I don't perform well, my rating would go down. Right. So that's where the competition part comes into play. If you're performing better than people who are at a higher level than you, your rating will improve. If you're performing, worse than the people who are at a lower level than you, your rating will go down. Right. So this does have some metrics, again, the number of problems solved, your heat map, and all of that stuff. And then there is this third website called AdCoder. This again has a rating system. I'll have to log in for that. Let me just see if I can log in. Yeah. So this does have a rating system. I don't attempt a lot of problems or a lot of contests on AdCoder. But yeah, these are the three websites that you should be referring to when you have some hang of competitive programming. Right. The first four are for, yeah, go on.
Yeah. So just quickly, sort of, I guess going back to more of the beginner side, like if people want to like get into math or data structures and algorithms, are there like any particular resources you recommend for that?
For data structures and algorithms, again, I would suggest going for Geeks for Geeks, the third website that I showed you for beginners. But if you want to get into mathematics part of this whole domain, I would suggest going up to this website called Project Euler. This is one website that has like mathematics specific problems. These are not competitive programming problems, but somewhat like mathematics puzzles. So yeah, this is one website that you can refer to if you want to get good at mathematics.
Cool. And I guess people can just like go through those websites and maybe find some problems to work on, something like that.
Yeah, sure. And what you can do, YK, is that you can probably add the links of these in the description after this live stream. I can provide you with all the links. So that should be helpful to navigate.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, I think I'm going to take a question from the audience. Is STL necessary to start in CPP competitive programming? First of all, what's STL? And yeah.
Yeah, sure. So this question is very particular to people coding in C++. So STL is supposed to be standard template library, and this library has a lot of standard functions. For example, let's say you have an array, and you want to find out the minimum in that array. One way could be to just run a for loop and find the minimum. Another way could be to use some standard function. Right. So this library does provide a lot of standard template functions and a lot of data structures as well. So I mean, for beginners, when you're just starting out, let's say you haven't done any competitive programming, you haven't even started your programming journey. it would not be a good idea to go for standard template library at this point. But once you get a hang of it, like I said, once you are, once you're a little comfortable with solving problems, and when you're going onto these websites like CodeChef, CodeForces, and AdCoder, that would be a good time to learn about this, because whenever you're implementing some logic for a problem, this would come in handy. You would require lesser code and lesser thinking of your own to implement some logics. But yeah, it is necessary. STL is necessary, but not for a complete beginner.
Thank you. I think the related question is like, what programming language should people use for competitive programming?
So that's like a hot question in competitive programming. Everyone who's starting competitive programming wants to know what's the best language to start, right? I would answer it in this way, that first of all, there is this language called C++. This is considered to be really good for competitive programming. Like you would have seen just now, the person who asked this doubt, asked this doubt which was very specific to C++, right? So most of the resources that you'll find online, and most of the discussions that you find online would be happening mostly in C++, right? So it's suggested that you start your journey of competitive programming with C++. But for people who have already some experience with some other languages, for example, some people could be totally familiar with Java or Python. Then for these people, I wouldn't recommend switching to C++ just for competitive programming. You can achieve almost similar results as in C++. In C++ in your own language as in C++. So if I were to just summarize it, go for C++ if you haven't just started, if you haven't started anything. But if you have already started and you are familiar with some language, stick to it. And if you haven't done it for a very long time, then again, you can go for C++. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions about data structures and algorithms, and I know we just answered it, but do you think it would make sense for you to like share your screen again and just kind of go through some of those websites and show people like where to click and stuff like that?
Sure. You mean for data structures algorithms?
Yep.
Okay, sure. Right. I hope my screen is visible. So again, the websites that I just discussed, that I just talked about, these are very CP specific. I'll just keep the websites that are specific for DSA. Right. So one of them is Geeks for Geeks. Like I said, this is one website that you can refer to for any implementation of like any algorithm. I would say any algorithm, any data structure that you find online. There's a very high chance that you will find the implementation of that on Geeks for Geeks. Another website that you can refer to for just the implementation part is CP algorithms. Right. This is again competitive programming specific. Sorry, this is my laptop, going sideways. Just a minute. Cool. So just give me a minute. I'll just put it this side. Right. I hope that's better. Cool. So CP algorithms is one website that you can refer to for any implementation of an algorithm. For example, let's go on to something like algebra, right? And you have binary exponentiation as a topic here. Now you go down and you'll find the implementation of this algorithm here, right? Similarly, you can browse through Geeks for Geeks for any like implementations. For example, this is like a section on Geeks for Geeks. Let's open something like quicksort, right? Quicksort on doubly linked list, right? So you'll also have the logic of that whole algorithm, and you'll also have the implementation here, right? And they don't just provide you with the best implementation; they provide you with implementations that are not absolutely optimal. So you can go down and you can understand it along the way. For example, the first implementation could be just order of n square. The second implementation could be order of n log n, right? So as you go down, you'll realize that your code is getting optimized, and you'll also have more idea about it, right? So this is one website that you can refer to for algorithms and data structures. For implementations of algorithms and data structures that are CP specific, I would recommend CP algorithms. And for practicing, again, I would recommend LeetCode. This is one website. This is one website that everyone uses, so you can rely on this website for practicing DSA.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you. Oh yeah, that's all good.
Yeah, sure. I can share it again, like if you have to add something.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think just like sharing the screen, just in general, is helpful for like adding more visuals.
Oh, sure. You want me to share it like for the entire duration? I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that might actually make sense. Um,
Okay.
anyway, we have a new question here. By the way, it's been 20 minutes so far. How are you feeling so far, Priyansh?
I'm feeling great. I mean, answering all of these doubts, I feel privileged to be here on your channel. Your channel is like really huge, so yeah, feeling great up until now.
Cool. Yeah, I mean it's good to have you here, and it's good to um, like virtually see all the viewers here too. They're almost like 300 people here, which is really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Um, okay, so this question says, I recently started learning DSA. I'm getting how to implement and like stuff, but facing difficulty while solving problems. How should
Okay,
I
so
approach?
I think that's a question that everyone who's starting DSA or problem solving would ask, right? So let me just tell you that in the beginning it might seem really overwhelming. You look at a problem, you don't have any idea how to solve it, but trust me, with time it gets better. Once you have solved a lot of problems, like in my case, if I show you my code forces profile, this is just one website that I've solved so many problems on. There are other websites that I've solved a lot of problems on. So if you look at this, I have solved almost 1900 problems, right? So that's just huge, right? And I've been doing CP for around, like, I registered 3 years ago on Code Forces. I've been very active ever since, right? So if you look at my initial graph, like if you look at these few performances initially, what you'll see is that my graph isn't going up, from the very beginning, right? In this phase, my graph is going down, like my rating graph is going down, right? And once I have some hang of competitive programming, you'll see that my graph is going up now, right? So this is something that will happen with almost every one of you. Initially you will be totally overwhelmed by the fact that all of these problems are so difficult, but once you get the hang of it, you'll realize that this is actually enjoyable. Once you start enjoying problem solving, then I mean, you would put in a lot of effort to learn things that you don't already know, and that's where the growth comes in, right? So yeah, if I were to answer it, it's just about practice and experience. The more effort you put into it, the better you will be.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way. Like, I feel like people should start with like easier ones, like like you were saying, Lead Code, Hacker Rank, and even like Code Wars. I think is becoming popular recently. It's, if I understand it correctly, like it's more for beginners. Um,
Code Wars. I
yeah,
haven't heard of Code Wars as such. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. I'll put like all that info in the description later. Um,
Mhm.
but I know like people struggle with lead code mediums sometimes, so they can just start with lead code easy, like one easy
Yeah,
problem a day. Yeah,
exactly. So like if you look at lead code, you don't just have very difficult problems. You can browse through and just select the difficulty that you're comfortable with, right? For example, if you're comfortable with hard problems, go for hard problems. If you're comfortable with just easy problems, then start with easy problems. Once you start getting the hang of it, let's say for example you're solving two easy problems, try including one medium problem into your practice session. Once you get comfortable with solving some medium problems, include more medium problems, so you keep increasing your level bit by bit.
yeah, yeah. I really like that approach. uh, okay, so I'm looking at like questions from time to time from the audience, and we're getting a lot of questions about recursion and dynamic programming. Like, do you have any tips on those?
Okay, sure. So let's begin with recursion. First of all, if you have to learn recursion, I would recommend going onto YouTube or yeah, I mean, go onto YouTube and look for any playlist that is there for recursion. So like if you look at a playlist, on recursion, just keep these pointers in mind. The first few videos should just talk about how you develop logic, and then there should be some videos that help you solve some problems on recursion. So once you do this, you'll realize that you've also understood the logic in the first part, and then you've solved some problems on it. I mean, by taking help of the creator who's creating that video. After that, you can go on and solve some problems on your own. And this way, I mean, this is exactly how you learn any topic, right? If I were to like, should I give some resources for recursion? Like, how do you want me to go about it?
Yeah, sure. If you could like share it on your screen, that'd be
Sure. Let
helpful.
me like open this YouTube stuff and let me just put in recursion here. I mean, that is what I do when I have to learn anything for that matter. Like, you can probably go for this video. This has one video and this just says recursion in one shot. So you can go for this video. You might have some playlists as well. For example, there is this playlist introduction, I mean, recursion basic to advanced backtracking series. This has like 19 videos, right? So I think you can go for this video, right? For example, if you look at it, first of all, it talks about some logic, then how do you build logic, parameterized recursion. After that, like they have some problems on it, right? A combination sum two, and all of that. So this could be a great start. I would recommend going for this video if that's in English. I'm not really sure if this is in English or it is in Hindi. But yeah, you can choose your language and go for that. Cool. So yeah, I think I missed about the dynamic programming part. So once you're done with recursion, you would have a better hand at dynamic programming. Because dynamic programming is nothing but essentially optimizing your recursive codes, right? So again, for dynamic programming, I would recommend this channel that is there on YouTube. This is one by Karthik Arora. This is like one place that I learned dynamic programming from. So you can head to this channel and learn about dynamic programming. So if you look at this channel, this has like a lot of stuff on dynamic programming. For example, this series, dynamic programming beginner to advanced. Then there are series on digit DP. Then there is a series on DP with bit masking, right? So I think this could be like a one-stop channel for learning dynamic programming. And yeah, after that, if you want to solve some problems, I would recommend going for this website called CSES Problem Set, right? So you look at this dynamic programming section, this has a lot of amazing problems. So I would recommend solving the first at least 10 or 12 problems from this section. The last few are kind of little difficult. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend trying out the first 10 or 12 problems. But if you're already comfortable with dynamic programming, I would recommend solving all of these problems for dynamic programming. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I just want to quickly mention, I have videos on like recursion, dynamic programming.
Oh, sure. You can check out CS Dojo as well. I mean, that's again a great channel.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I think you would be having some playlists, I guess, right?
Yeah, I have some playlists, but the best way to do that is just to find like on YouTube search. People can just search for like CS Dojo, dynamic programming, recursion, different things.
Sure, let's do that.
But I don't want to like talk too much about myself, so let's see if there's
let's close this.
Yeah. Actually, there's this interesting question. There are built-in data structures in many high-level programming languages, so why do we need to learn it?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So let's say I give you a problem that requires you to use some data structure. For example, which data structure should we take? Let's say you want to implement some problem in graphs, right? You might have some inbuilt implementation for graphs available in, let's say, Java or C++. But now if you want to do some modifications in the code of the graph, right? You can't do that if it's already available as an inbuilt library, right? But if you want to solve some problem, you might have to tweak in a lot of stuff there. For example, if you look at this data structure called segment trees, right? I don't think any language or any programming language, any high-level programming language has its inbuilt implementation. But yeah, even if they do have it, you would essentially have to write a lot of code to tweak it, right? So yeah, I think it is very important to understand how all of these data structures are implemented, because at the end of the day, you might have to re-implement them, or you might have to make some changes in them. And again, like solving some problems that are data structures or algorithms heavy build up your problem solving skills as well. So when you're working for some, let's say, big tech company, and you want to implement some logic and they don't have some inbuilt implementation of that data structure, you could write it on your own. So I think that's something where this whole comes into play.
I'm curious, like when you're working on a competitive programming problem, are you allowed to use like external libraries? Do you write your own libraries?
Okay, that's actually a very interesting question and an amazing question, because like I used to be of this opinion when I was starting competitive programming, that I cannot use any external code, I cannot use any external library, I will have to write everything on my own. But that's not how it works. So if you look at my GitHub, I do have this whole, let me open my GitHub. Sorry, my laptop is like really far, so I have to, reach out for it. Okay, so this is one website. This is one like repository that I have of my own for some inbuilt. I mean, for some template codes. For example, if I go on to something like range queries, right, and if I go on to segmentary, so this is the code of a segmentary, right? You look at this. This is like huge. So let's say you have a problem on code forces that requires you to use segmentaries. Now you cannot implement that whole segmentary logic on your own at that very point, right? So having some template codes readily available for you does help. I mean, if you feel lazy and you don't want to implement all of these codes on your own, you can refer to this public repository that I have of my own, CP templates. This does have a lot of implementations. This does have implementations of a lot of algorithms. For example, HLD as well, heavy light decomposition. Now you look at this code. This is like huge. You wouldn't essentially be coding this on spot, right? This is just insane. This is huge. So yeah, you can use external codes, and it is always preferable to use external libraries and external repositories to pick up codes from.
All right. Yeah, that actually kind of gives me a lot of kind of follow-up questions, but I'm wondering like if it would make sense for us to like go through maybe one or two questions. I don't know, like I'm thinking like leak code easy, medium, or HackerRank, like something on the easier side, so we can go through it quickly. Or maybe like if depending on like how comfortable you feel, we could go like for something more challenging too.
Yeah, we could go on for something challenging, but it's just that my laptop is a little little away from me, so it's kind of difficult to code. But yeah, we can go for any problem. Let's see any problem that we have on lead code maybe, or let's say we go on code forces.
Yep.
So let's go for problem set and pick up some easy problem, because then I don't want to be seen as somebody spending a lot of time of the stream just thinking about some problem, right? So let's pick up some easy problem. 800 is supposed to be like the easiest level on code forces. So let me just sort them by the number of submissions. Right. So do you want to pick up this problem? Can we solve this problem?
Yeah, let's try it.
Sure. Okay. So let me just read through it, and let me increase the font a little so that everyone can see this. Okay. So we have this question: one day, three best friends. This is something that I haven't solved already, right? So let's try to solve it on spot. One day, three best friends, Petya, Vasya, and Tonya, I don't know how to pronounce that, decide to form a team and take part in programming contests. Participants are usually offered several problems during programming contests. Long before the start, the friends decided that they will implement a problem if at least two of them are sure about the solution. Right? Otherwise, the friends won't write the problem solution. This contest offers n problems to the participants. For each problem, we know which friend is sure about the solution. Help the friends find the number of problems for which they will write a solution. Okay, great. So if you look at this problem, what they're telling you is that you have n problems, right? I mean, in this problem itself, let's say you have n questions, right? And you have these three players. Let's call them A, B, and C. So if you look at this matrix, I mean, these are like, let me just show it to you. Okay, so I haven't read the input part here. The first line contains n. N is the number of questions that are there in this problem. The number of problems in the contest, then n lines contain three integers each, right? So for example, if you look at this, this sample input, so this has two problems in it because it's written two here, right? And for each of these problems, you get a list of three numbers. For example, let's say for the first problem, you have 1, 0, 0. This just means that A is comfortable solving this problem, B is not, and C is not. Right. Similarly, if you look at the second problem, A is not comfortable solving it, B is comfortable solving it, and C is also comfortable solving it. Right. In this problem, what they're asking you is to tell them the number of problems that they will write a solution to. And there's a condition to this whole thing. The condition is that if you have to write a solution for a problem, at least two of the three people should be comfortable solving it. Right. For example, let's go through this sample input. So if you look at the first problem, it is, I mean, two people are comfortable solving it. So that's essentially one potential problem that we can solve, that we can write a solution for, right? For the second problem, again, all three of them are comfortable solving it. So we'll write a solution for it. For the third problem, you'll see only one person is comfortable solving it, right? So we won't write a solution for it. Fine. So if I were to implement it using code, let's go about doing that. So this is some code that I've written beforehand. Let me erase all of this. Now again, if you look at this whole entire code that I have here, this is like some template code that I have already available for me. Right. I mean, I will start writing my solution from this point. So I'm using C++. I mean, this is like this is just like a walkthrough, on how you submit problems on on code forces. Right. So let's take the input int n. Int n is what? N is the number of problems that you will be getting for this whole problem, right? And then you have this what? You have 3 integers for every problem, right? So let's keep a variable called answer. Answer is the number of number of problems that we'll write a solution for, right? So we go through n problems and we take in the input, right? Let me just see. Right. So these are the 3 inputs that I've taken for each problem. And what I'll do is I'll just check whether 2 people can solve this problem or not. And how can I do that? Like one tells me if I have one written here, this just means that that person is comfortable, right? So essentially, I can just add them all up and see if that number is greater than equal to 2 or not. So if a plus b plus c is greater than equal to 2, I just add 1 to my answer. What does this imply? This implies that this problem is solvable by me. This problem is something that all of these 3 people will be writing a solution to, right? And at the end, we just print this, right? I hope this is fine. Let's see. Okay, let's copy this input here and let's see if our output is coming out to be same. Okay, we have 2. 2 was the intended output here. We're getting 2. Let's copy another sample input. Now, what you would observe here is that in this problem, you're given some sample inputs and some sample outputs. Sorry. Here. So if you look at this problem, there are some sample inputs and some sample outputs. What does this mean? This is not like the test cases on which your solution will be tested upon. These are just sample inputs and outputs, right? Essentially, your problem will be tested on a lot of other test cases as well. Your solution will be tested on a lot of other test cases as well, right? So let's try to submit this problem. Let's copy this code and let's submit it. And let's see what is the verdict that we get. And I just hope I've read this problem correctly, because I don't want to end up, getting a wrong answer or something like that on a very easy problem. Okay, so now you look at this, submission that I made, and the verdict is accepted. What does this mean? This just means that I have a correct solution for this problem, right? And you look at this solution that I submitted on this problem. I have a wrong answer on pretest 5. What does this mean? This just means from a list of test cases that this problem has, my solution failed on the 5th test case, right? Let me decrease the font here to, sorry. Yeah. So now if you look at the solution, this is one huge solution. Obviously, I wouldn't have implemented it on spot. I would have picked up some code from my library, from my repository that I have. Now look at this. This was the test case that was there for this problem. The output, okay, sorry. I'm somehow, pressing this whole thing. Yeah, now you look at this problem. This was the test case that was there in this problem. The output that my code generated was 499. But the answer for this test case was 0. Right? So this will give me a wrong answer. My solution will be considered accepted if it passes on all the test cases. Right? This was one solution wherein I got a wrong answer. Then similarly, we have this verdict called time limit exceeded. Right? If you look at this code on this last test case, my code, returned this verdict. I mean, I got this verdict called time limit exceeded. What does this mean? This just means that while running my code on code forces wasn't able to get the answer in a limited amount of time. Right? For example, if you look at this problem, if let's say I run an infinite loop, right? Let's say I run an infinite loop before I do anything. Sorry. Right, this is like an infinite loop, right? So let's save this and let's submit this solution on code forces. Right, let's have people guessing in the chat what would we get as an output. I mean, get as a verdict. What do you guys think we'll get as a verdict? Will we get wrong answer, or will we get time limit exceeded, or will we get accepted? Or will I get compilation error if somebody can spot some compilation errors in my code? I mean, that would be interesting. Let's see, what are we getting? So this is running on the first test case, but we have an infinite loop, right? So this gives me this verdict called time limit exceeded on the very first test case. Right. So I hope YK that was helpful, like going through this problem. Although this was very easy, I didn't have to think a lot on this.
No, that's actually really helpful. So like in each of these problems, the input is always like a text file, and output is just a single value.
Okay, that's a good question. Again, the input is the input could be like a text file, but the output could not be just one one output, like one character or one number. For example, if you look at this output, this is like a this is like some peculiar stuff, right? So it's not essentially always a number. It could be some string as well. It could be some entirely. I mean, it could be just one line as well, right? So it could be anything. You just have to print the output in the way that they expect you to print it. For example, look at this problem. Let's say instead of printing one, let's say I just print something like this. Let's say I print two before printing one. Now, what do you expect? Would you expect getting a right answer or a wrong answer? Obviously, you'll get a wrong answer, right? Because code forces wants you to print one, but you're printing this two one. This is not intended, right? So, I mean, you just have to follow what they tell you to output.
All right. By the way, it's been 40 minutes so far since the stream started. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I mean, if I can solve some problem on stream, that's like a totally different feeling. So essentially, if you look at my YouTube channel as well, most of them are competitive programming streams, right? So essentially, I'm just solving some problems on those streams, and it feels great. So yeah, that was great.
Nice. Yeah, I'm wondering if we can like quickly answer a question and try solving another problem if you're down for it.
Yeah, sure. Like probably we can try out some difficult problem because these are like very easy
Yeah.
and they don't require any thinking.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let me just stop presenting for a while and let's see if we have some doubts in the chat, right? And then we can get back to presenting.
Yeah. So the question we have here is, it would be great for beginners if you tell them about some of the biggest CP contests in the world.
Okay, good question. So first of all, you have all of these websites like Codeforces, CodeChef, AdCoder, right? All of these websites you can refer to for solving problems and also for attempting competitive programming contests. But these are not like very prestige. Contests that are known by everyone, right? So there are contests like Google Code Jam, Google Hashcode, Google Kickstart. Then there are contests like Facebook Hacker Cup, CodeChef Smackdown, right? So there are like a lot of contests like these are very well known. Fine, so probably we can add the links to all of these in the description after this video. It would be very difficult to like go through all of them because there are just a lot of them.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, if you want to solve another problem, I think people will like that too.
Sure, just give me a minute. Let me go through the chat and see if we have something interesting.
Yeah, someone's asking, Python or C++. We already answered it earlier. Basically, C++, if you're just getting started, but if you're already familiar with like Python, Java, or other languages, don't switch right away necessarily. Like start with what you have and then switch if you want later.
Great. Okay, so somebody's asking, should we go for a lead code problem instead of a code forces problem? Yeah, I think we can do that because that's like a totally different environment. So let's go for lead code. And let me pick up some problem. I mean, I don't want to, end up wasting a lot of time just explaining how I'm thinking about the solution. I do want to spend some time explaining how you can, attempt problems on all of these platforms, right? So I hope this is my account only. And yeah, I mean, for that matter, I haven't done a lot of lead code. Like if you look at my profile, I haven't solved a lot of problems as such, like only 33 easy, 56 medium, and just 15 hard problems. So yeah, mostly I do attempt contests only on LeetCode. I don't, end up spending a lot of time solving problems. So let's see. I don't even know how to navigate on this platform so much. Let's see. Okay, let's go on to problems only, and then let's pick up some easy problem only for now. We don't want to, just waste time trying to think about solutions.
Yeah, I think easy or medium would be okay for you probably.
Yeah, I mean, for me, anything is okay, but I don't want to end up, just making this whole stream like a competitive programming problem solving stream. Right.
No,
Let's pick up this problem. Let's see.
I think it's okay. People will probably enjoy that.
Okay, sure. Let's go for like something like a medium problem.
Yeah, medium sounds good.
Cool. Let me just read through this problem if I've already since I've already opened it. Okay, so I think this is not interesting. This is like very easy. This just inbuilt implementation you can use. Right. Let's go for something like medium. How do I set the difficulty?
Yeah, and if you're in the chat, tell us what problems you want us to solve.
Yeah,
Using
and in
medium
fact,
fine.
don't just tell us what problems you want to solve, but let's say if you've picked up some problem, think about approaches to solve that problem. Right. So let's see which problem do we want to like solve. Swap nodes and pairs, something like this. Should we go for this one, maybe?
So the nice thing, to me about leak code is like I think it shows like how many people like the question. I don't know if it shows that in this
Oh
list.
yeah, it does show that as well. So I think we should pick up some problem that is like liked by some people. So I don't know what is this. Implement str
How about
swap
22
nodes.
generate parentheses? Or yeah, whatever you want, I guess.
Okay, I think this is like a linked list problem. I don't really like playing up with linked lists, so let's not solve this.
Yeah, I
I
was
mean,
thinking
linked
like
list is more like the data structures algorithms. It's not even
yeah,
about competitive programming.
yeah.
So
How about
what were you
22?
suggesting? Generating bracket sequences, something like this, right?
Which one?
You said something around bracket sequence, I
Yeah,
guess, something like that.
go to 22. Yeah, scroll down. There's
22. Okay.
yeah,
22. Generate parentheses.
parentheses.
All
Yeah,
right.
that
Great.
might be good.
Okay. So this problem is given n pair of parentheses, write a function to generate all combinations of well-formed parentheses. Okay, that's interesting. And I mean, n is the number of brackets. I mean, the number of parentheses that you want to use. For example, if n is equal to 3, you want to use 3 opening brackets and 3 closing brackets. Right. So I mean, if I were to just implement it in a very brute force manner, what I could do is just have this thing. What like I can just pick up any bracket sequence. I can pick up this first one, this first bracket sequence, and I can just check all of its you know I mean, how should I put it? Like I can just permute it, right? I can just consider all the permutations of this string, and if any of them is valid, I just include it in my answer, right? So how does that sound? This approach. I mean, just pick up the first sequence and just do all the permutations on it.
That
So should we?
doesn't sound like that efficient, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's not definitely. It's not efficient. But if you look at the constraints here, n can go up till 8, right? So I mean, it won't run, but this is something that I want to just put up, right? So that people can look at how we're approaching problems, right? So I mean, that's one approach, but that wouldn't run. Again, we haven't really talked about time and space complexity, but the solution that I'm suggesting right now is like uh, 2n factorial. So if you have n brackets, I mean, if you have n as the input, you have 2n brackets, right? And if you consider all the permutations of it, that's like 2n factorial. So here it would be like 16 factorial, right? So 16 factorial is like really huge, and it won't work, right? So I mean, I hope that makes sense. Like, in terms of time complexity, it's really difficult to explain right now because I haven't really talked about time complexity. But just assume that the approach that we discussed right now was really inefficient in terms of time, right? I hope that's fine. Like, saying it in this way.
No, yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
Cool. So how do we go about generating all the valid, parentheses? I mean, that's the approach that we just discussed was definitely, not the most efficient. But another approach could be something like this. Let's say, we have int n as the number. We can, have some opening brackets and we can have some closing brackets, right? So let's say we have opening equals to n and closing equals to n, right? And initially, how many brackets have we used already? Int used equals to 0, right? So this is our initial state. Our initial state is, we have 0 brackets that we've used already, and we have how many remaining brackets? We have n opening brackets remaining and n closing brackets remaining, right? So I can just write a DP solution like DP of used comma opening comma closing and try out all the possibilities, and then the complexity would be what? Complexity would be time would be like order of what? Order of n into n into n, and space would be again order of n into n into n, right? So how does that sound like? Should we go about implementing this solution?
Sorry, could you explain that again?
Okay, sure. So we have this input which is int n, right? What does this mean? This just means that I have n closing brackets, n opening brackets, right? So essentially, I can just have a dynamic programming state. What would that state be? It would be just simply the number of brackets that I've used till now. How many brackets do I have remaining? I mean, we don't even need this use thing. So let's just have this way, right? So the final time complexity would be order of n square, and the space complexity again would be order of n square. Now, let me just explain the solution. It's very difficult for beginners to understand because obviously this is like a medium problem. But look at it this way. Initially, what do you have? Initially, you have n opening brackets and you have n closing brackets. What would you do now? You would try to place some opening bracket or some closing bracket at the index that you are at, right? So if you are at any index, you would want to essentially place some opening bracket or some closing bracket. That's the two possibilities that you have, right? And I mean, it doesn't really matter which opening bracket are you placing. Are you placing the first opening bracket or the last opening bracket? Right. So that's like a simple dynamic programming state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So you're
What I'm doing is something like this: DP of opening, closing, and this just considers all the ways.
are you gonna try to create an array of brackets and then kind of concatenate them into a string later?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it would be really difficult to implement it on spot. I mean, it's not difficult to implement, but that would just take up a lot of time. So that's primarily why I did not want to choose a problem that requires a lot of implementation.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I hope that that doesn't sound, something like, me being very incompetent.
No. I totally get that. Like it's hard to
Yeah.
like solve something on the spot. Um, did
But
you?
yeah, how about we just implement the first approach that came to our mind. I
Sure.
mean, we could show how, we implement problems on lead code and how we submit them.
Yep.
Right. So let's say if you talk about the first, bracket sequence that you have already is something like this. Let's say we have string initial, right? Initial is something like this, and we just place n opening brackets first and then n closing brackets. Right. So this is the first initial string that we have. Let's try to print this and let's see what we're getting. Let's run this code. Okay, I think we'll get some compilation error because just a minute, we haven't returned anything. Okay, let's see what is the error that we're having. We have this. Right, so this is what you're getting initially. This is the first bracket sequence that you have in the line, right? And next what we can do is we can consider all of its permutations, right? And whichever of them is like a valid permutation, we just include that in our answer. So let's try to do it that way. So we have vector string, sorry, we already have that available. So let's do something like this. Okay, so let me just explain this function, which is like the next permutation. What this does is that it takes a permutation of a string or an array or a vector, and it just returns the next permutation if it's available. If it is not available, it just exits from this loop. So this is this function that I'll have to implement, which is this valid bool valid. So I just have to check here whether this permutation that I'm considering is valid or not. Right? How do you check whether a bracket sequence is valid? A bracket sequence is valid as long as you have more or equal number of opening brackets before closing brackets, right? So we could have int sum equals to 0, and we could just iterate on the string. So if I equals to opening, I just do sum plus plus, else I do sum minus minus, and I just check if sum is greater than equal to 0. Sorry, if sum is equal to less than 0, I just return false because that's not a valid subsequence, right? A valid sequence. Cool. So let's try to run this code. And let's see if you're getting some compilation errors. Okay, I haven't named it correctly. Okay, so do you see that we're getting all of the valid subsequences here when n is 3? And we're getting a right answer. So let's try to submit this. Also, we won't get a right answer because this is like, very heavy in terms of time. So, but let's see. Let's try to submit it and let's see what is the verdict that we're getting. Okay, somehow we're getting success. I mean that it shouldn't have happened. Uh, some more reasons why I should hate lead code probably.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, if
mean,
n could, yeah.
yeah, with 8 brackets, it's probably okay, I guess.
No, it's actually not okay. Like if you look at it, we have something like this. Uh, if n is equal to 8, the number of brackets that I have are what? We have 2 into n, right? So that's like 16 factorial ways. And I don't think that should work.
How
I mean,
big is
16.
16 factorial?
Okay, let's consider it this way. So we have 6 factorial. 6 factorial is what? 6 factorial is 720, right? So we have 720 into 7 into 8 into 9 into 10 into 11 into 12 into 13 into 14 into 15 into 16. Okay, this is really huge. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at, sorry, are you able to see this?
Yeah.
It is this huge,
Yeah.
and this won't run. But somehow it's running. I don't know how. But yeah, that's not the most efficient way to solve this problem. Like I was saying, the DP approach that I was suggesting is much better. Like, cool. So yeah, that's how you submit solutions on lead code, right?
So with a DP approach, I guess. So like when you call when you call the same function like recursively, you would like append to what you have, right?
Right.
Like you would start at like index 0, and then kind of go to like index 1, 2, 3, and then just like keep adding stuff just like that.
Yeah, but we'll also be storing what is our current state. So essentially, we won't be repeating everything again and again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I guess generating everything it's not an efficient approach.
The dynamic programming approach.
Oh, I mean like the initial approach that you were just talking about, the dynamic
This one, right?
programming it's the like more efficient approach, right?
Yeah, definitely. The dynamic programming approach, is much more efficient, and it will be only considering the valid sequences, right? So we won't be even going into the invalid sequences. So that's definitely better than this. Yeah.
Cool. Do you ever use like Python to solve things, by the way?
I don't know. I haven't really used a lot of Python. What I do is sometimes, if you look at C++, like if you look at this number, let's say I tell you this huge number. Let's open Python and we have a equals to something like, let me increase the font, a equals to something like 2 to the power 1000, right? If you print, okay, sorry, it is a equals to 2 to the power 1000.
Yeah.
Now, if you print this number, this is like huge, right? You
Yep.
can't fit this number in C++. So sometimes when I, don't want to get into a lot of precision and all of that stuff, I do end up using Python as well. But for competitive programming, mostly not, because it's slower. It's slower than C++.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember someone was asking earlier, like, do you get judged on like time and space complexity or just the runtime?
No, you only get judged on the runtime. It doesn't matter what your space and time complexity is, but it's like very, they both are correlated. The better your time complexity, the lesser time it will take for your code to run in, right? So essentially, you're not judged on time complexity. You're judged on the runtime. But in order to be able to code for a particular runtime, you'll have to look at the time complexities.
Cool. Yeah, it's been almost an hour, so we can end it if you want. Like, yeah, because basically we can end it whenever you want. What time is it over there?
It's 10:16 p.m. But yeah, I mean, I'm cool like answering some more questions for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can end it. Yeah.
Sure.
So let me
Sounds
just
good.
stop presenting my screen.
Yeah, let
Yeah,
me
cool.
see if there are any questions. And I think if there's anyone, oh, this one's kind of a good one. Is it necessary to be good at data structures and algorithms to get a job?
Okay, it depends on what job you're applying to. So it kind of totally depends on the type of company you're applying for, right? For example, if you look at all of these fan companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix, they do require you to be a very good problem solver and also be very good at data structures and algorithms, right? So for these companies, yeah, you would have to be good at DSA in order to crack their interviews. But if you look at all of these interviews by these startups, right? So startups don't really care about a lot. I mean, they don't really care a lot about your problem solving skills or your data structures and algorithm knowledge. What they care about is your development skills. For example, if there are two candidates, one of them is a great competitive programmer, is a great problem solver, and let's say the other one is very good at implementing stuff in React, or let's say is very good with Python, right? And I mean that's like a development skill. This is like a problem solving skill, right? So startups would prefer the second type of person, and big tech companies which are established would prefer the first type of person. But again, it's not like startups are bad or these big tech companies are good. Both of them are paying a huge amount of money to their employees. So yeah, both of them are good options. It's not essential. It's not totally required that you go along this DSA path and learn all of these DSA and then go apply for a job. You can also be very good at development and then go and apply for a job as well. Yeah, both of them work, but you need to be good at some skill. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. I totally agree with that sort of approach. Um, anyway, I feel like this is probably a good time to end the stream. But
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. Cool.
did you have anything like you wanted to add to this conversation we've had so far?
Um, Not exactly like so far. It's been great. It was really great coming on this huge YouTube channel that you have of your own, right? And talking about competitive programming. And thank you so much for taking out time for this and scheduling all the meetings and putting out all of this stuff on Twitter so that more people can come and join. And yeah, apart from that, like for the people who've who don't know about me a lot, I also have a YouTube channel on competitive programming. So if this was the conversation that got you that got you interested, I would definitely recommend checking out that YouTube channel of mine. And I hope you find some insightful content there as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think this, like I said, this is probably a good time to end the stream. If anyone's interested in learning more about competitive programming, go check out Priyansh's channel, Twitter account, everything. Everything's in the description. And if you're new on this channel, make sure to subscribe if you want, and feel free to follow me on Twitter too, because I've been pretty active on Twitter at YK Dojo. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice day. Bye.